Alrighty then. Okay, so we're going to do basic daily life, put one shoe on at a time, that sort of thing. So we've already told us before we go into day to day. Let's briefly talk about Shabbat. You guys have already been here for a Shabbat. There are 39 things that we're not allowed to do. I have a list, but I'm not going to drag it out right now. You can look it up if you want. The ones that affect us the most. Before that, where do they come from? We have the term melacha. When God finishes creating the world, it says He rested from all His melacha. He uses the term melacha. It says you're not allowed to do melacha on Shabbat. And then it talks about the melacha that had to be done to build the Mishkan, which was the tent that we had in the desert. That was a portable temple that went with us. So there are 39, the rabbis derived 39 things that had to be done for that. Those are not allowed. There are also two things. One is stated explicitly, is that you're not allowed to make a fire. The other one, that's stated separately from the others. Oh, also when it says about the melacha to build the Mishkan, it also says you shall build the Mishkan, but my Shabbat you shall keep. So we learned that building the Mishkan did not override Shabbat, and therefore all these things that we needed to do to build the Mishkan you couldn't do on Shabbat. There, like I said, the 39 categories that the rabbis come up with. The most important of them is that affects us the most is fire. Basically, you can't make a fire. You can leave a fire going if you have it going already. You can't add more fuel to it. But if it's somehow being fed automatically, you don't have to stop it. Anything that kind of goes by itself is fine. So there's a debate about what exactly is electricity. Specifically, incandescent bulbs, right? You know incandescent bulbs, okay. Rely on heated metal. Heated metal existed before and was useful as a thing. That's how they made any sort of metal instrument, was you get it really hot in a fire and you pound it. So the Rambam says that quotes earlier sources, obviously, that if you heat metal, that's considered making a fire. So incandescent bulbs are out. Now we've all switched over to fluorescent light bulbs and LEDs and everything. So what then? So pretty much everybody agrees that electricity is out. However, there's a couple of different things that are offered why. One of them is fire. Another one is we have a concept of finishing something. If something was not ready to go, it's called makabapatish, the final nail hammer. So if you have something that's not usable now, and you do something to it, and now it's usable, then that's can be considered that's considered finishing, and that's one of the things you're not allowed to do. Tying and untying, making a permanent knot. So when we tie our shoes on Shabbat, we don't do double loops. You do like a single loop or something so that it pulls out really easily. And that's just one of the pains of what you have to do. As far as fire, you're not allowed to cook. However, you can heat things up that were already cooked. And that basically encompasses a huge range of Jewish law of what exactly constitutes heating up versus cooking. These are probably the biggest ones that affect us. We can't use hot water from the sink. We keep an urn of hot water because we left the fire. We leave it on overnight. we specifically have something on Shabbat day that has been left on overnight. Every Jewish society, because we're spread out all over the world, every society has like a different food that they make. The most common one is actually called cholent, and you'll hear about that in this case, CH is pronounced like in English, cholent. A cholent is a stew that's left to cook overnight. The Yemenites, they have a couple different things. One of them is this like fried dough that is that they put in a metal container and put it on the fire, and it's called jachnun. I have no idea how you spell that. Jachnun, Arabic term. Anyway, so we have that. We're not allowed to use electricity, therefore we're not allowed to drive. So that's why we all have to live within walking distance of the synagogue. We're not allowed to write. And we can't really use electricity. That's probably the main things that you'll hear about, like what goes on in Shabbat. And you basically spend the whole day eating. All of our holidays are eating, praying, and sleeping. And outside of the land of Israel, there was a problem historically. This goes back a couple thousand years. We would declare today actually, meaning Thursday during the day, was Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month. The month was declared in Jerusalem by witnesses who had seen the new moon. As soon as the moon goes completely gone and then a little bit comes back, then they come and tell the court in Jerusalem. And the court in Jerusalem declares it's a new month. Well, there reached a point where you had a bunch of people who were trying to, there was the Samaritans, and you had the Sadducees, these rebel groups who were trying to mess up the Jews, so they would come and say, oh, we saw the new moon on the wrong day. And so you have between that and also the need to try and spread it out, spread out the information. If you live far away from Jerusalem, you may not know by the time the holiday hit. Now most of our holidays fall in the middle of the month, Passover, Shavuot, Passover and Sukkot. You may not even know by then there's two possible days, which are the 2 days. So what they started doing was they would keep 2 days of every holiday. Now that actually even included Yom Kippur. So fasting for 2 days, was probably not fun, and I'm glad I never lived through it. Because anything that gets in can't get back out. We still keep 2 days outside of Israel. We keep 2 days for a lot of the holidays. So if you go from Shabbat to Sunday and Monday are both holidays, by the time you get to Monday, like all you can think about is like, am I supposed to eat, sleep, or pray? Yeah. And then you eliminate 2 of them. It's the third. Wait a minute, I just ate, okay, and right before that I prayed, so it must be time to sleep. I forgot the.
Can you read on Shabbat?
Oh yes, you can read.
And you can study Torah.
Yes, that's one of the. Hang on one sec. You can always study Torah, and you're always supposed to study Torah. Yes, that's what you're supposed to be doing in the first place. We have big dinners. You guys have seen it. It's basically like Christmas for 2 meals. We have like basically a Christmas or a Thanksgiving dinner every week. And on top of that, there's like another like smaller meal in Saturday afternoon. So you eat a lot. Every holiday is like that. Every holiday, Passover, Sukkot, you have in the nighttime you have a huge meal, and in the daytime you have a huge meal. Now do that for 3 days. That's what I said. Like eventually you get to the point where you're like, what am I supposed to do now? It's either eat, sleep, or pray. And that was before the movie came out, though. Was it?
Love. Eat, pray, love.
Eat, pray, love. Eat, pray, love. Yeah. I don't know. When did she sleep?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Shabbat. Any questions about Shabbat? We also like we dress in nicer clothes and everything, but you guys kind of already experienced that. And therefore, like for work, I'm incommunicado for 25 hours really, at the bare minimum. They've tried making me the support guy carrying the telephone and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know whose idea this is, but somebody's going to have to replace me for that 25 hours. Any questions about that? So it actually makes kind of a tight-knit community because you kind of have to live within walking distance of each other. In the old days, like, in the old country, they would live on farms and stuff, and they may just spend it with the family, but nowadays, every Jewish community, every Orthodox community pretty much hovers around a central location. All right, so moving on, the next big one you'll hear is about kashrut. These Shabbat and kashrut, basically, there's another one that has to do with, that was called family purity, but I'm not really going to go into that one. But these are basically the definitions of a Orthodox Jew. Basically, the outward, I would argue that's not a good definition because my definition of Orthodox is I agree with all these things. Whether I do them or not, that's a different issue. But certainly what we call from religious or whatever, Orthodox, basically if you keep Shabbat and kashrut, you're in. If you don't, then you're already kind of out. You're not in that group. I don't think that may be a good idea, but that's the way it is. Kashrut refers to basically food. Kasher is actually the word for prepared. And there's a whole lot of rules around this.
Sorry.
The main things is no milk and meat. That's a biblical law that's stated 3 times in the Bible that you shall not boil a kid in his mother's milk. There's a whole exegesis of why it means. Specifically, you can't take milk and eat it with meat. You can't prepare it, and if you prepared it, you made a mixture or something like that, you soaked meat in milk, you can't even sell it. You have to just destroy it. You can't give it away.
It goes for all dairy products, doesn't it? Not just like milk.
Right, yes,
right?
It's all dairy products. So for instance, pepperoni pizza is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Is there a reason for that?
Yes and no. So in Judaism, when we say there's a reason, actually it's interesting, the word for a reason for something is tam, which literally means taste. So it's like not really the reason, it's like, this is like a taste, this is something you can take out of it. So we're not given the reason by God for what this is, but there's a lot of lessons that have been derived since then. I just wanted to make that clear. So we could say the reason is that milk represents nurturing and meat represents more cruelty, and you don't want to mix those together. The Rambam says that everything we have, almost all of our laws, is to distance us from idolatry. That there was some sort of idolatrous service that involved specifically mixing milk and meat, and therefore Jews should stay away from milk and meat. So there's a lot of different things that people have come up with. I think the nurturing thing was Shimshon Raphael Hirsch from Germany in the 1800s. There's a lot of different reasons given, but at the end of the day, is God told us to do this, so that's why we do this, and He has some reason whether we're privy to it or not. And there's also when you get into Kabbalah, there's all kinds of things that are affected in the heavenly spheres and everything, So it's really hard to say.
I guess no bacon cheeseburgers, huh?
So that's another one. So there are also a number of things. Now this milk and the meat refer to kosher animals. So there's a whole list of kosher animals. The main ones that people know about and that come up are pork, shellfish. Our fish all have to have fins and scales. So, they're all the ones that look like this, but they, like catfish, are not kosher because they don't have scales. Anything that has scales has fins. As actually stated a couple of 1,500 years ago more. About 2,000 years ago. Anything that has scales automatically has fins. Anything that has fins does not automatically have scales. So if you find a piece of fish and it still has the skin on it, and it has some scales, you know that it's a kosher fish. You can eat it, even if they've cut it.
What's the reason for that? Why?
Why? Now
How did they put those into different category? Why?
See, these are all things that you would have to ask God why he did it that way. Why he said we can eat this and not this. These are all things directly from the Bible.
Okay.
And I don't know that there's any particular, it does, I think, tend to be that the fish, the shellfish and stuff are more scavengers, but I don't know that for sure. There's no real reason. You can eat fish that eat other fish as long as they have fins and scales. So there's any rule that you would give as like here's a higher meaning behind it. You could find an exception to probably.
I think part of it has to do with health.
I doubt it.
You don't
Because
think
if you take the example I always give is if you take a kosher steak and you inject it with anthrax, it is still kosher. If you take a kosher steak and you rub it through the dirt, no.
Okay.
No, but that's a different question. But as also eating pork is perfectly healthy. There are in China pork is a big staple, and there are people who live to over 100. It's not like everybody's dying of eating pork, so it's tough to stay. Any domesticated animal is a health risk. Because I was listening to this thing about when Columbus came over, and people don't realize the environmental upheaval that it caused in this part of the world. They brought livestock, and the Indians didn't have livestock. They didn't live next to domesticated animals, and therefore they had none of the diseases that are contagious. They didn't exist. Because all those diseases, we have the swine flu, the bird flu, they all jump from species to species, and if you live next to the animal, there's a good chance you're going to get it. But that goes for cows and birds that are kosher, as well as pigs, which are not. Now there is an interesting thing about pork that there's 4 animals that are listed because there's two signs of what is a kosher animal. One is that it has split hooves, right? So you have. Right, that's the bottom. If you looked at the bottom of an animal, so it's split like that, and it chooses cud, which means it has a number of stomachs. I don't want to get too gross.
Like 4 or something.
And the food moves from stomach to stomach, coming back up and being chewed again. That's called chewing its cud. And if it has those 2 things, then it's a kosher animal. And the Torah lists 4 animals that have one and not the other. And if I remember correctly, the camel chews its cud but does not have a split hoof. And pork is one of the ones that has a split hoof. Maybe it's the other way. Maybe pork is the only one that has a split hoof but does not chew its cud. The other ones chew their cud, but the other ones chew their cud, but they don't have split hoofs.
I thought camels had split hooves.
No.
You know?
Apparently not.
Maybe it's more like a horse.
Yeah, I think it.
No, horse
Look it up.
doesn't
It
have
definitely.
a split hoof.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they say that the pork, the pig is trying to trick you because he's hauling out his hoof, saying, "Hey, look, I'm fine." But inside there's something not right. Now, pork is also associated with Esav. This idea, and with the Christian world saying, "Sorry, this goes back before you and I met." Saying, "Hey, look, we're okay. We have Messianic Judaism." But it's like on the inside it's all different. So, all right. Let's not get bogged down in that. Okay, so pork, milk and meat, shellfish. There are a bunch of other animals that we can't have. So that what it comes down to as far as what we can have, because that's a shorter, easier list. We mentioned any fish with fins and scales: salmon, trout, halibut, cod, carp. Most of the ones that you think of as regular fish that they have in the grocery store. Specifically tuna. Specifically excluding swordfish and catfish, which are the two that I think here that people eat that look like fish but are not. Obviously excluding shrimp, lobster, all the good stuff.
Oysters.
Oysters, yeah. Got me distracted now. I just ate them. I'm getting hungry already. What else?
The things that you can eat.
Oh, the things we can eat.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So basically, cow, lamb, goat, which is really rare in this country, deer, which is fairly rare in this country, but exists. These are things that exist here that I've actually had. Bison, I've had bison once. Those are the land animals. Now, one important thing to this is that the land animals that we can eat all produce when they have the milk that they produce can be turned into cheese. Animals that are not kosher, their milk cannot be turned into cheese. It doesn't curdle. So like camel, which they drink camel milk in the Middle East a lot. It won't curdle. Pig's milk won't curdle. So those are basically the land animals. There's a couple more species, but they don't really exist here, or I've never had them. Oh, giraffe. They say is kosher. The joke is where would you have to cut the neck. So where do you cut it? Giraffe. Giraffe.
Like Africa,
Oh.
the
That's all
giraffe.
long neck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice picture, Bobby.
I could probably do okay if I really tried. The ostrich, emu, those are all not kosher. Oh, birds. Birds, the Torah just gives us a list of things that you're not allowed to eat. The ones that everybody agrees you are allowed to eat. There's some confusion because it gives a list of species, and sometimes we're not quite sure what that word means. Which species is it referring to? So we limit ourselves to only the birds that we know for sure. And actually, one interesting addition, which is turkey. So basically, birds we eat chicken and turkey. You could have pigeon, but nobody does it here. That's, I think, pretty much it. I mean, what else do you find in a normal grocery store, anyways?
What about quail or something?
Quail. Yeah, quail.
Well, they ate quail in the wilderness.
Yeah, they ate quail in the wilderness, and it is something that people do eat here.
How about pheasant?
Yeah, I think that's a type of chicken.
Is that a type of chicken?
I don't know. I think it actually qualifies as one of the other, and duck. And duck is actually a bit of a dispute, but most people hold that you can eat it. And goose, I think would fall under duck. That's pretty much it for birds. Specifically, all the birds that seem to be listed in the Torah seem to be predatory birds. But I don't know that really means anything. Even the non-predatory birds eat worms, so I don't know what the big deal is. Okay, so other rules about kashrut is you can't have anything that was the silver. We have to keep our utensils separate. You can't, because of this cooking milk and meat together. We have separate things for dairy and separate things for milk for meat, and then we have another category called parv. Parv just means it doesn't have milk and it doesn't have meat. It's completely vegan. The vegetables and stuff, we have to be careful because of the animals we're not allowed to eat. We have to be careful with insects that get into vegetables and fruits. So we have to make sure that we get all the insects, any insects that are in there out.
You can,
which
like,
makes it
if you
difficult
find
to eat
an
certain
insect, you can still eat it, but you gotta, like, get the insect down and wash it?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
So, but there are some foods that people just won't eat, not because the food itself is prohibited, but because it is too difficult to clean correctly. I think Brussels sprouts I've heard, although I've had Brussels sprouts at people's houses. There was also a place in Israel, in when Jews were allowed to live in Gaza, that called Gush Katif, and they had a business there, a very famous business in the Jewish world, where they made hydroponic plants. They grew them in water, and the place was completely free of insects, so you didn't have to really check these vegetables, and it became very popular by Gush Katif produce. Then they got thrown out, and I think they've moved the business or whatever, but it's not. I think it's much more expensive now or something. Also, interestingly, Israel's now, I think somebody told me, the biggest consumer of turkey in the world, because it's easy to grow, and it's you can't really grow like land animals there very easily. They have some, especially in the Golan, but they mainly use them for dairy. So you have these different categories. We have different separate dishes. You specifically have to be careful not to cook. Like I said, you can't even use something that you just use for meat to cook something dairy. Even though you cleaned it in between, you have to give it at least. You have to go through a process in order to make it suitable for dairy, and not everything can be made suitable for dairy. Depends on what the thing is made out of.
Now, glassware, you.
I didn't want to get too into the details.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Glassware, for the most part, people is agreed upon that. No, I don't want to get into that detail.
Sure.
Because that's a long story.
Okay.
We also, so on top of that, you have to make sure that it wasn't cooked with anything that. So we also have the term. So if something is allowed, everything has been done correctly, and I am not allowed to eat it. In English, we call that kosher. In Hebrew, it's actually kasher is the word. In English, it's developed where we use the term kosher for it is good. Kasher is the process. And when we speak like Judeo-English, I'm going to kasher this.
So it's more like the verb form, right?
Yes, this is the verb, and this is the adjective. I guess I don't know if there's an adverb. We did it kosherly. Specifically this often refers to when you have something that got messed up. You had a dairy spoon, you put it in the meat pot, you didn't realize it, so now you go through a process to purge that of anything that got into it, and that's called koshering it. It also refers to meat and stuff. There's a whole process. So meat, we have to, besides the animal itself being kosher, it has to be slaughtered in a specific way. And they can't stun it. They don't, nowadays they apply a shock to the animal to stun it. They don't do that in kosher meat. They take a knife that has to have no nicks in it. They check the knife before they kill the animal and after to make sure that there are no nicks in the knife. The knife has to be on top of that has to be very sharp, and they take the animal and they make a movement like this. If they stop and then continue, it's no good. They cut the I believe it's the carotid. I'm not sure. I'm not good with
carotid or probably
jugular.
But probably jugular and carotid. I mean, if you go deep enough, you get them all.
Okay. One of the reasons for that is they want the heart to keep beating, because one of the prohibitions we also have is not eating blood, as we talked about before, is there's a prohibition not to eat blood. So what we do is they call it a shochet, the animal slaughterer. That's the person who does it. The verb is to shecht. Actually, that's in Yiddish, I believe, shecht. Lishchot, I think, is the verb in Hebrew, which would be the same thing as the noun here. So the shochet, he does this, right? So now everything, great. You know, the animal's dead. It's bled out of most of its blood. Now what? So they have to inspect the animals, specifically the lungs, because if something is not kosher, it is called, and this is actually this is English, like Judeo-English. We call it treif. Taref literally means torn apart, and it refers to, like, you know, an animal that was torn apart by other animals. If an animal drops dead by itself, the technical term, we would call it treif. We call it treif like anything, like, you know, like if you had, like I said, pig's milk, that would be, we call it treif, even though it's not an animal that could be torn apart. We have the term nevela. Nevela is an animal that dropped dead by itself, or that was killed in a manner that is not shchita. Shchita is that's fine, isn't it? Shchita is I don't know how you say that. It's like when you add like ness to the end of a word, you have like cleanliness, you know, yeah. So it's like the overall idea of, so shchita is what a shochet is, the business that a shochet is in when he shechts. So shchita, a slaughter, is lost my train of thought. So shchita has to be specifically done by an observant Jew who knows all the laws of how to do it. Even if a non-Jew knows how to do it, he does it, it's treif. After the animal's been shechted, they check the lung, because if it would have, even though it didn't drop dead by itself, but if it had a disease or something where it would have dropped dead by itself within a year, it's considered an nevela. And then nowadays what they do is they have a slaughterhouse. They kill the animal, they check it. If it's good, great. If not, they sell it as non-kosher meat to, like, McDonald's. There's been this has become a big political issue lately, because McDonald's started saying they were having protests from all the anti-Semites in Europe, saying, you know, protesting McDonald's to stop buying from places that do shchita. Well, now we have no place to sell all of the meat that gets rejected, and that's going to, you know, cause all the prices to go through the roof. And, you know, it makes it not a viable business model. On top of, so he checks it, it's fine, right? There's a term, glot. Glot literally is Yiddish. Chalak is the Hebrew. It means smooth, meaning the lungs don't have any lesions. That's actually a higher form of kashrut, but pretty much everybody in America holds that now. So if the lung is not smooth, then, and it has like lesions, even though they've healed, they will sell the meat for treif. Now, you also have the animal, right? And there's a story of Yaakov, and he wrestles with an angel, and he's injured by the angel. And it says that to this day, Jews do not eat the gid hanasheh, the sinew or the sciatic nerve, which runs down like the back legs of an animal. So in other cultures where this was a rarity to shecht an animal, they would painstakingly remove that part. Nowadays, when things are mass produced and everything, what they do in a kosher slaughterhouse is they cut off the back of the animal and they sell the whole thing for treif. There is a town in China called Kaifeng,
Yep.
and apparently there used to be Jews living there, and they still have streets named the people who don't eat this part of the animal. Have you been there?
Yeah, that used to be the capital of China a couple of
Right.
thousand years ago.
Right. Well, I don't think it was that long ago. I think it was like up until like 1,000 years ago or
Yeah.
something like that.
1,000 years ago.
And what's the name of it?
Kaifeng.
But feng is spelled like he spells feng, like peng. He spells.
It's I've started with I've.
Huh?
I've. Feng. I.
No. Yeah, but you say chung
Peng.
peng,
Yeah.
peng, right, instead of peng,
Yeah.
right? It's spelled kai feng, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kai. You can look it up on the internet. It's really interesting. Like that.
Yeah.
That's how they spell it in English.
Okay.
Yeah, there's still some Jewish people there.
Yeah. Well, apparently they're descendants, but they're not really Jewish anymore.
Okay.
The only Jews, like everywhere, are the Israelis who came to China to do business. That's true, like all over the world.
Uh-huh.
My wife and daughter went to the Greek festival here in Atlanta, and they were browsing through. They had a bunch of people selling stuff. Israelis. My wife's like to my daughter, "Why don't you go try to speak Hebrew too?" And they're like, "No." Okay, so now we've gotten all that. We've got a kosher animal, and like I said, now you have to salt it to get out the rest of the blood. With poultry, with birds, in order to pluck the feathers, you can't dunk them in hot water, because they have to be salted, and you can't salt them until you get the feathers off, before they can be cooked in any way. So dunking them in hot water is how they open up the pores and get the feathers off easily. So if you buy a kosher chicken or turkey, it will always have feathers on it, because they cannot get off all the feathers. There was a scandal a few years ago. This one guy in New York started selling treif meat as kosher, and specifically chickens and stuff. And I heard that the way they figured it out was they didn't have any feathers on them. If you look at any,
Now all
if you buy
all
Empire,
the feathers are on them, or
no,
just
they
some feathers?
They just have some feathers left.
And even what about like chicken parts? Like if you bought like a thing of a couple of breasts.
If it has the skin on it, it will have some feathers,
Okay.
because they just cannot remove them with the techniques that are allowed. All right, so now it's salted, which makes kosher meat often salty to begin with. So you have to watch, when you season it. All right, so we got all that, and then we got halak. So one of the other rules is we cannot have something that is made start to finish by a non-Jew. This is a rabbinic decree. Rabbinic decrees have reasons. They have to have reasons, right? So this is something the rabbis declared later on to prevent something else. So they were mainly they're always afraid of intermarriage between Jews and non-Jews. Jews are not allowed to marry non-Jews, and they were afraid if you get too close, then you can't have. One of the things that affects is wine and grape juice. Wine and grape juice, in order to be kosher, have to be made by observant Jews. If the wine is then later cooked, so as long as the wine is uncooked, it's just they took grapes, fermented them, and now poof, it's wine. Then if a non-Jew touches an open bottle, the whole bottle becomes, whatever they touch becomes not kosher anymore. They had two reasons for doing this. One was intermarriage. They didn't want Jews marrying non-Jews. The other one was, back in the times, up until probably up until recently, even in some cultures, maybe even today, the idolaters, the pagans, would make a basically toast to their god just by lifting up, wine. So they were afraid that you never knew when somebody took the glass of wine and said, to Zeus, and then put it back down. So there's a whole bunch of laws that have to do with that, but basically all of our wine now has to be kosher.
Let me ask you something. I brought you the bottle of wine. And it was kosher wine, but the fact that I gave it to you, is that okay?
A lot of wine, as long as it's still all sealed up, it's fine.
Okay.
But a lot of wine sold today, not the very good stuff, right? But the more mass-produced stuff, the stuff people drink more is cooked. The word for cooked, mevushal, or mevushal, depending on who you ask, is once it's been cooked, which most of our, let me grab a bottle. Here you go. So you can touch this because you see right there it says mevushal.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah, cursor for.
Huh?
Kosher. You said.
Oh, it says kosher for Passover,
Oh.
right? Which all the wines are really. Like they just put that on there so you know. And then mevushal,
Mhm.
right? Mevushal means cooked.
Okay.
So once it's been cooked, it's not considered like something. The idea was with both for idolatry is you wouldn't give your god something kind of second rate. So they weren't worried about it once it was cooked.
Oh.
They also, you wouldn't, if you're trying to make a match between your son and his daughter, you aren't going to serve like the second best stuff either. So they weren't so worried about people getting together over mevushal wine.
So no matter what, you could drink that. Is that what you're saying? That.
Right, we could all drink this together and pass it around and everything. It wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
Once it's been cooked.
Mhm.
That's mevushal. So this applies to wine and grape juice. If you we went to a winery in Israel and they said they have like one guy who's that basically enforces to make sure that because once it's sealed and stuff, then other people can handle it. Even for the non-religious Jews to not handle it, so they have like one rabbi there who basically enforces the rules. He was out at the time, so they had this like locked iron gate, and they said we can't go past this because the guy who's in charge isn't here, so you can't go back in there where the wine is kept. So okay, so that's grape juice and wine. We have cheese because the worry. And also we have the problem with dairy has to be kosher, has to be somebody has to know that it's kosher, is that specifically with cheese I said like pig's milk won't turn into cheese. Cheese has two problems. One is that they make it with the lining of an animal called rennet. They take the insides of the animal's stomach and they use that to curdle the cheese. And I'm not sure how you spell it it's called rennet in English. The other issue is that if you have cheese, they could have mixed in even like there's always some liquid usually, so they could have mixed in a little bit of goat's milk or not of pig's milk or something. You never quite know. Mainly the issue is the first thing is the rennet. So we have kosher cheese. It has to be specific, and that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. Oh, and I said it can't be cooked from start to finish by a non-Jew. I think bread is maybe an exception, but what they do is when they have so they have these agencies. A group of Orthodox Jews get together and they form an agency, and they say we're going to come. We'll hire ourselves out to you, Kraft or Nabisco or whoever, and you pay us. We come to your plant and inspect, and then you can label your food kosher. And the way they do it in America is by the trademark laws. If you have a symbol that represents your company and you've registered it, nobody can put it on their product without your permission. And that's how they enforce it. They say, if you want to put our symbol on there, which means Jews will buy it, and a lot of other people, Muslims and other people who just think kosher is cool, if you want them to buy it, you have to, when we tell you to do something, you do it, right? You don't play games. So, and what they do is they'll do, depending on what it is, they'll do surprise inspections. They'll, the frequency is determined on what they're making. Is it something that usually is kosher? Is not really a big fear that they'll put something in it they shouldn't, or is there really a big fear? They know who the suppliers are. They check the manifest. They go through the whole. They know the whole way all these products are produced. So some of the symbols that you will see on packages. This is probably the most common. A U inside of a circle. That's the symbol of the Orthodox Union. I'm sorry, the Union of Orthodox Synagogues. This one does not have that symbol. This has some other symbols. I think these are from Israel. Oh yeah, no, this has that symbol. Right here.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You see the little symbol right there? The circle
yeah.
and the unicircle?
Mm-hmm.
That means it's kosher. We'll find this on like practically probably 70% of the things you buy will be marked with that if you shop regular brands at a regular store. They put, the way the OU does it, some other places do it differently. They'll write they'll write next to it, they'll put a D, which means this product is dairy. They will put, sometimes in conjunction with the D, they'll put a P. That means it can be used for Passover. There's different rules that apply to Passover, and I'm not really going to go into those. You can't have grain products. You'll see this symbol a lot, a K in a circle. You will see a 5-pointed star, particularly here, because this symbol is out of Baltimore, with a K. There are some symbols that are known not to be any good. This is one of them. A triangle with a K in it is not. They don't really inspect very well. I don't know that they inspect much at all. Another common symbol you will see is the Hebrew letter Kaf, that looks like a backwards C with a K in it. That's called a Kaf K, K-O-F-K. It may look more like this. Yeah, it's a backwards C, basically. Those are the main symbols that you'll probably see like all over the place. There are others. There are hundreds of symbols, but those are the most common.
Hey Bobby, just coming back a little bit, like the wine and the grape juice, has to be kosher.
Yeah.
What about just grapes? Does that,
No.
or is that's just parv, right?
Those are parv. And anything that's a raw vegetable, except for the bug issue, is kosher by itself.
Okay.
So, we go to the farmer's market and whatever we feel like buying, we buy. As far as vegetables go.
And one other thing, on the meat, you salt it. Are you supposed to soak it or something, or?
They soak it in. I believe they soak it in salt water.
Salt water. So kosher
That's what I
meat
mean by salt.
that's already done. So when you buy
Exactly.
it, you don't have
It's
to do
already
that process at home, right?
Right.
Okay.
Back in the old country, they did all this stuff themselves. And actually, you don't have to do it if it's going on a grill. If you're grilling it, and liver is extremely hard to get enough blood out of, so you pretty much have to broil it.
Okay.
Broiling it, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
Okay, so that's kashrut. And the other major thing that we do every day is praying. So we have two things that we're trying to accomplish basically in prayer. One is we have a commandment from the Torah to say the Shema. The Shema is it was originally 2 paragraphs. The rabbis said, you know what, you're supposed to remember the Exodus from Egypt every day. So we're going to throw in a third paragraph. So we have 3 paragraphs that constitute Shema. And we say it twice a day. Graphs. I do know how to spell. 2 times a day. In the morning and in the evening. Specifically after it's dark and after it gets light enough. On top of that, that's one thing we're doing, right? The second thing is that we pray 3 times a day. We call, in Yiddish, they call this davening, daven. They call the prayer part, they call it actually the Shmona Esrei, which means 18. They added a 19th blessing against the heretics 2,000 years ago, but since they already started calling it the 18, they didn't change the name, so we still call it the Shmona Esrei. They even call it the Shmona Esrei on special days. It's different, like on Shabbat it's only like 7, but we still call it the Shmona Esrei. Because Shabbat and holidays, they have a completely different prayers, but we still call them the Shmona Esrei. We do this 3 times a day. So the way we break it on a normal day, weekday. So what we do is, in the morning, we say Shema, and then we do the Shmona Esrei. In the middle of the day, we just do the Shmona Esrei, like in the afternoon. And at nighttime, which you can actually back it up to just before nighttime, we say Shema, and then we pray again. And then if you did, so the reason we back it up is so that we keep, if you came for Mincha, which is the afternoon one, if you come late and then stay, so you can fit both of them together with a minyan. A minyan is 10 men. 10 Jewish men who've come together to pray. It's called a minyan. It comes from the word moneh, which means to count. And there's certain things you can say with a minyan that you can't say without a minyan. You may have heard of Kaddish, and that is basically acts as a separator between different sections of the prayer. And what happens is, in order to, if someone is in mourning, or if they on the anniversary of a close relative's death, they will lead the Kaddish as a way of, did I go over this? We went over this before, is that the idea is that you're doing a mitzvah, you're leading the congregation in praise of God because of your relative, and therefore your relative gets credit, right, gets an elevation. They get brownie points. Okay, so in the afternoon we do just the Shemona Esrei, and in the evening we do Shema and the Shemona Esrei, and everything around it basically is tacked on to that. Those are the 2 things we're trying to accomplish in that, and that would take you about 5, maybe 10 minutes. But in the morning we have two long blessings before Shema, leading into Shema. We have 2 blessings afterwards. They were afraid, after the Shema, before the Shemona Esrei. After the Shemona Esrei, we do a thing called Tachanun, where we apologize it's a confession of any sins we did, so that to try and keep the debt low, right? There's some other psalms that we say. In the temple, when these 3 services reflect the service that was happening in the temple. In the temple, they did a sacrifice in the morning, and they did one in the afternoon, and then at night they had to clear the ashes. There was it was considered a service by itself. So they mimic that. It's also based on, if you look in the Torah, it says that Abraham, he got up early in the morning. It says specifically when he's taking Yitzchak to sacrifice him, it says he got up early in the morning. When Yitzchak meets Rivka, it says he was coming back from the field. And when Yaakov runs away, it says the sun set, and he he said, how could I have not prayed? I think he says he had not prayed there. So we see that Abraham, it tells us about him praying in the morning, tells us about Yitzchak praying in the afternoon, and Yaakov at night, so we mimic that. It also says in the book of Daniel that Daniel prayed 3 times a day. Right? This has long been established.
So when you get up and pray, you do the 2 long blessings before the Shema?
Yeah, there's actually more than that. There's Psuke de Zimra, which is basically psalms that are supposed to get you focused, right, before you actually start really praying. You have, and then you have the 2 blessings before, and in the morning you have 1 long blessing afterwards. At night you have 2 long blessings after Shema, before the Shema Esrei. In the morning and in the afternoon, we do this confessional. We do another psalm called Ashrei. We do in the morning we do in the morning we do a thing Uva L'Tzion. I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. And then also mimicking the service in the temple, they had a different psalm. You familiar with Psalms? It's a book of the Bible, and it's basically poetry. So in the temple, they would use part of this poetry. Most of it was written by King David, and they would use this poetry as part of the service, right? And they had a different one for each day. Psalms is also like what we do when something big is going on. There's going to be a service at 9 o'clock at the synagogue in Israel because of the situation in Israel where they're going to say Psalms. Mm-hmm. Christians also picked up on saying Psalms. So it's basically, what you do when you're worried about something. It's these things that King David wrote. He wrote some of them while he was running away from his son who was trying to kill him. He wrote some just in praise of God and whatever when he was sick. So it's like kind of covers a lot of different things.
Do you have to say these prayers at the synagogue, or can you do them? Some at home.
You can do them at home. It's better if you're a man. It's better to do them with a minyan.
So if you
because there are things you can't say by yourself.
Okay, so if you were home to say something there because you're by yourself and you don't have a minyan, you can't say certain prayers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The text of the Shemona Esrei, just as an outside, and like I said, so on holidays, on Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month, on Shabbat, right? So there was an extra sacrifice that was offered in the temple. So we mimic that, right? Because this whole thing is basically about mimicking the temple to keep us reminded of what was going on in the temple, and to like establish our connection with God and the longing for rebuilding the temple. It's called Musaf. Musaf means additional. So on Shabbat we have Musaf, and we tack it on to the morning prayer. So, and on a Saturday morning, if you were to go to bed with Jacob from the beginning, which is like 8:39, depending on the time of year, they'd move it, I don't know. It ends up at like 11:30, 12. So basically like 3 hours to go through this. They also, and on those days they read from the Torah, and on Shabbat that takes about like a half an hour, 40 minutes or something like that by itself. They read one section every week, so that at the end of the year you complete it and you start back over again of the Chumash, the first 5 books.
Now the Torah is only read during the morning service. Is that correct?
No. We read it. We read a short version of it, just about somewhere around basically the first Aliyah. We read Monday, Thursday, and Saturday, and then in the morning, and then on Saturday afternoon they also read the same thing for the coming week.
And they take the Torah scroll out and actually read from Torah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's Musaf, and it basically, actually, the Musaf prayers usually describe what the Musaf offering was like. So it'll mention what animals were brought and everything, you know. And the one on Yom Kippur is actually extremely long. Yom Kippur, actually in Yom Kippur we pray 5 times. 5 times? Yeah, 5 times. And you basically stay in synagogue all day. They have like, if you're lucky and they're kind of quick, you get like an hour and a half break. But otherwise you're there from like 9 in the morning till like 9 at night, and plus the night before, because you can't eat. So they're like, what else are you gonna do? Okay, so Musaf. So the basic, not counting Musaf and stuff, which is about about the sacrifices of the day. The basic layout of the prayer service is three blessings that basically are praising God, establishing your like who you are in relation to Him. Basically, 3 blessings of praise, I would say. Establishing who He is, who you're talking to, right? The idea is that you're coming before a king, right? At the end, we have 3 blessings that kind of constitute like thinking. So we have one that originally was about the temple service. Now it says, may you like desire us and want us to come back and build your temple. And then there's one specifically modim, which is thank you for always looking out for us. And then sim shalom, which is the grant peace. So it's all kind of like in the thanks category. And the 3 blessings at the beginning are like, you're the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You raise the dead. You're the all-powerful God. You're holy. And then in the middle, the other 13 blessings are stuff we want. So there's one for, and it's all stated in the plural, and it's all stated as like sort of a national desire. So when we say the blessing for health, it doesn't, it says, heal us and, and stuff, but it doesn't mention anything specific, heal Aunt Marge, that sort of thing. So you can add in your own personal ones there. You can also add them in way at the end. At the end, at the very end, after these 3 blessings of thanks, there's another section that just turns like personal, like guard me, from like may I desire to follow your commandments, that sort of thing. Protect my tongue from speaking evil. That's how it starts.
Now I'm just a little confused, like with the 3 times of prayer and these blessings. I'm not catching like the order of
so
everything.
This is all. So we have the three times a day we pray. Mm-hmm. What do we pray? This is what I'm just talking about. What is in the Shemona Esrei? All right. This is on a normal weekday. Actually, all of them, even on holidays, start with 3 blessings of praise and 3 blessings of thanks.
Okay.
Right. This is the Shemona Esrei. When we say the Shemona Esrei, we face east, which is here. We face. You have Jerusalem, you have the Temple Mount, and then you have the actual temple itself, which is not there, but it's where that big gold dome is pretty much the spot where the temple is supposed to be. We'll fix that eventually. I think if you've heard of the western wall, also known as the Wailing Wall, so the temple. Did we already do this?
Yeah.
With the diagram and stuff, and this is where we pray, and
yeah, I think
and
so.
it's as close as we can get, whatever direction the temple is. We stand with our feet together. In Yechezkel, it talks about we stand like this with our feet actually completely together, and we face east, which is this way here in this house. In Yechezkel, it talks about that there's a vision, and God says that talking about, I think he was talking about Yehoshua the Kohen Gadol at the time, and he says, I'm going to give you movement among these immobile. So from there we learn that the angels are immobile. They only have 1 foot. They don't move around. I mean, obviously, Abraham saw angels that moved and everything, but they were in a human form. But in their natural form, they don't move anywhere. So they only have 1 foot. Anyways, whatever that means, we stand with our feet together and we face east. If there was a temple and you go to the temple, you were actually supposed to bow down all the way on the ground. We only do that once a year on Yom Kippur now. Normally we stand there. There's a thing called shuckling, which is not required, but people will do like this or move all kinds of different ways just to try and to keep themselves focused and or just awake. And it's silent. It's also called, the prayer is also called the Amidah. You will see it called, Amidah means standing. Because you stand for that part. Like I said, the in between will vary between the 3 blessings, the beginning, 3 blessings at the end, will vary based on the day. On a normal day, we have a whole list of things. Like I said before, we have a prayer that God will humble the heretics, that He will, I mentioned health, wealth, basically, which is actually stated in the form of rain, that God provides rain and makes it a good year. There's a few that have to do with restoring the Davidic kingdom, bringing in the exiles, all the things that we talked about from the Mashiach class, and but most of it has to do with that. Actually, it's return our like counselors so that we have good leaders. Is one blessing, and redeem us. So all the things basically, on a national scale that we want, and then thanking God at the end. Okay, so that covers, I think, very basically outside prayer. Any questions so far?
Yeah. Now, when you wake up the first thing in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't there something that you say and then you wash your hands?
Some things. Everything we do, there's a blessing for. Mm-hmm. So, when you get up, there's a thing that you say that God returned your soul to you. And you do that every morning. You do that every morning as soon as you get up. Then you go to the bathroom and wash your hands. And we do the washing with the cup. And there's a blessing for that, and then we have blessings in the morning just about getting up. There's I don't forget the number, the Berkot HaShachar, the blessings of the morning, a list of things like that you didn't make me blind, that you that I can stand up straight and whatever, that sort of thing. Everything is stated in the plural of just like you did it for all of us. Everything we eat, we say a blessing for before and after, and if it was enough, right, at one time, then there's a measurement. Then we say a blessing afterwards.
That's what we read at the end of the meal when you pass out the books.
At the end of the meal, if you eat bread, that's the really long one. Okay. That's there's 4 blessings in there plus a whole bunch of things that start Harachaman. That may the merciful one, do such and such. If you eat just grain products, it's a smaller blessing. It's about a paragraph. If you just have water, Coke, something like that, then there's a short one-liner. There's a blessing for coming out for when you finish using the bathroom. That's in the morning we have a blessing over learning Torah that covers the entire day. Yeah, there's a lot of blessings. We're supposed to say 100 blessings a day. Between the Shemona Esrei, the blessings in the morning, and using the bathroom and eating and that sort of thing.
So do you do that every day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't ask me about going to shul. I'm not good about that.
I'm not going to shul?
I'm so bad about that.
Well, you've been to shul every time I've been there. Well, maybe you
No. On Shabbat, I get there. Well, Shabbat, I get there eventually.
Okay, but during the week?
But during the week, and also on Shabbat morning, I get there more it starts at 8:39. I get there 10:30.
And when you go, do you start at the beginning?
This is what we do when we
Yeah, I know. Like,
when we apologize. Yeah, we like it's part of the service on Yom Kippur.
right. Do you start from the beginning to try to do the whole thing when you come in and you're late or whatever? Because the one time I went, everybody's like on a different page,
yes,
right?
Yes, that is. It reminds me of whack-a-mole the first time I went. You ever play whack-a-mole in the arcade? They have this game that this thing. If you go to like an amusement park or something like that, they give you this big hammer, and you have this big box in front of you that has these round holes, and these things pop up, and you're supposed to smash them down. And every time you smash one, you get a point, right? So that's what it reminded me of. This guy stands, that guy sits, right? Yeah. So there are certain things you can skip, and certain things you can't skip, and I make sure not to skip the things that I cannot skip. However, I'm not always good about not skipping the things that I can skip. But enough about me. Let's talk about you.
All right, good enough.
One question.
Yeah.
In Middle East, in some country, Muslim country, girls has to wear a veil.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How about in Israel?
No.
Oh.
So first of all, Israel, the country, is not a religious country. There are more and more every year that it becomes less and less secular and more religious. However, even among the very, very religious, except for one nutty person that lives there right now, one person in the entire country who wears some sort of veil thing, women in Judaism do not wear veils. They do if they have to live in a Muslim country, but in everywhere else there is no religious requirement to wear a veil. Okay. You're perfectly allowed to see a woman's face. A married woman covers her hair. A married woman covers her hair. You saw my wife wore the beret thing?
Yeah.
She covers her hair when there are other men around.
Oh.
My daughter does not cover her hair because she's not married.
Okay.
What if you're divorced?
That's a dispute. That's a dispute. No, I'm serious. Yeah. There are some people who take it off, and some people say no, you have to keep wearing it once you got married in the first place. Yeah, that's a different thing.
Okay.
So there is no marriage ring.
So in a Jewish marriage ceremony, the man has to give the wife something of value, and that's how he basically acquires her. And usually that's done with a ring, a plain gold band, because a person who knows jewelry at all can look at gold and say, oh, okay, that should be worth about this much, because it has to be something that has an obvious value. If you give her a diamond, they don't know, is it a real diamond? Just by looking at it, just like, oh, I see it on your finger. They don't know, is it a real diamond? Is it a fake diamond? Is it cubic zirconium? Just by looking at it without having some expertise. So we give.
Doesn't it
in the mirror
have to be $2 or something like that?
You can marry. One rabbi told me you can get married with I think 2 witnesses and a bottle of Coke. He said I wouldn't recommend it. Yes, it has to be worth more than basically a penny or 2, or 2 pennies. Yeah.
Can y'all drink soft drinks? Can you drink Coke?
She has to accept it on the yes.
Okay.
Coke is kosher since the rabbi in Atlanta first gave it the supervision. I think in the 1940s or something.
Okay, cool.
Rabbi Tobias Geffen. And the rabbi, I don't know if you guys saw on my wall, I have a picture of my personal rabbi on the wall. He actually is the inspector for the OU. He does one of the big things he does is Coke. He goes down to Puerto Rico and inspects Coke.
Okay.
I want to really go quickly over the holidays because I have to wrap this up by 9. So we have Passover, Sukkot. This is going to be very, very quick. And Shavuot. These are called the 3 pilgrimage holidays, or regel. Regel means foot, your leg or your foot, and the regel refers to the fact that you had to go to Jerusalem to appear on these holidays when there's a temple. Passover, we don't eat bread. You can't have anything that's leavened, where the bread rises, the grain ferments at all. So anything that got mixed, any grain that gets mixed with water, wheat, barley, spelt, rye, and it's left for 18 minutes without being cooked, then you can't eat it and it's considered treif on Passover. So we have to clean our whole house, find all. We're also not allowed to own it. So we clean our whole house. We find all of it. We can actually put it aside and sell it to a non-Jew, and we rent them the space basically that it's in. We're basically holding it for them, and then after Passover we buy it back if they decide they didn't want to eat it. They could just come and eat it. It's happened. It's happened in Israel. They sold like all of the countries. They call it chametz, is what you're not allowed to eat. I think just like last year or something, there was like the community where they sold it to a guy and then the guy disappeared. So I think there was a guy who actually disappeared completely. If there's something that was left out of the sale or whatever, you can't even have it even after Passover's over. You have to destroy it. Sukkot, you guys were here for. Build huts. Shavuot is the celebration of the giving of the Torah. It's the marks the day when the Torah was given every year, and the custom on that holiday, which is just a custom, is for men to stay. Actually, a lot of women do it too. They stay up all night learning Torah the first night because they can't do it 2 nights. Okay, the Passover lasts for 7 days. At the beginning is a two-day holiday outside of Israel. In Israel, it's 1 day. And at the end is the same thing. Two days outside, 1 day in Israel. The holiday at the end marks the crossing of the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, rather, I should say. It really wasn't the Red Sea. Sukkot, it's interesting. There's nothing that I can pinpoint to exactly. Something happened on that day, but it celebrates the fact that we lived. And when we were in the desert, we were protected by God, so we didn't really need a roof. So, you needed walls for privacy, but you didn't need a roof for protection from the elements. There were also clouds of glory that hovered above us, so it stayed like at a constant temperature. It was a whole miraculous time there. And Shavuot is pretty self-explanatory. Those are the 3 pilgrimage holidays. Those are all from the Bible itself, from the Chumash. Those days you had to go up to Jerusalem. Passover, you had to bring a lamb that was eaten actually as dessert. You would bring another animal as just for food, but you would bring it as a sacrifice. It was a type of sacrifice where it's just like, I feel good, we're all good, and we're going to eat this animal. So everybody would come for that, and everybody had to come on Sukkot. And then we did the whole thing with the 4 species and everything before. Shavuot, you had to bring your first fruits. It's also called the holiday of Bikurim. Bikurim, which are first fruits. You brought them in a basket, and you gave the basket to the priest and everything. It was like a whole big procession. Today we don't have that because there's no temple yet. If this stuff in Gaza goes on much longer, maybe there will be. Who knows? The other holidays. Before Sukkot, there's Rosh Hashanah, which is the New Year. Happy New Year! Yom Kippur. This is all. I think we went over before the numbering of the months. So this is the 1st and 2nd of the month of Tishrei. This is on the 10th of Tishrei, and then on the 15th is Sukkot. But these 2 holidays these 2 holidays are not part of the pilgrimage holidays. You did not have to be in Jerusalem for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. Everything in the world gets judged. Every creature, every person. It's the birth, the anniversary of the creation of Adam, the first man. So everything in the world is judged. What should happen with it this year? And then Yom Kippur is the appeal. From the 10 days that you have in between, the 10 days of repentance, you're supposed to try and fix things so that by the time you get to Yom Kippur, it's better. God said, okay, he's changed. We can get rid of this decree. He won't have to lose this money, or he won't have to whatever, leave his home, or have Sandy wash him out, or whatever, or die. That's Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That was all the month of Tishrei, right? So you had the 1st and 2nd, then the 10th, and then the 15th. The 15th one lasted for 8 days, and at the end it was another two-day holiday, which actually is considered a separate holiday called Shmini Atzeret. And that day was just picked. It wasn't. It has nothing, no historical significance by itself. It was just a convenient holiday. Is when we, it's Shmini Atzeret. Shmini is the 8th, and an Atzeret is like a stopping or something like that. And they restart the cycle of reading the Torah that day, and they dance around with the Torah, and they call it Simchat Torah. I should say we do all this.
I mean, those
The
could
joy
be
of Torah.
two separate days, but they are
So
combined
in Israel,
Israel.
actually, these are combined into one day.
Mhm.
In America, outside of Israel, the first day, the holiday is Shmini Atzeret for both days. However, on the second day of Shmini Atzeret, we dance with the Torah and we restart the cycle. In Israel, they've already done that the previous day. And that's called the joy, Simchat, the joy of Torah.
At Bet Jacob, do y'all like unroll the whole scroll and?
No.
You don't?
No, that would be very dangerous to do.
Well, that's what I thought, but I read that a lot of, perhaps not
heard of
Orthodox. Actually, I saw a picture of it at in a Reform newsletter where they, in the sanctuary, they, and the whole congregation came around and held parts of it.
No, we wouldn't
Okay.
do that. No, we would not do that at all.
Do you think that's
completely disrespectful?
okay?
And is very dangerous. If the Torah falls on the floor, everyone is supposed to fast for 40 days. Now, today
Really?
we could probably not manage that. I don't know what they actually do, but I don't want to be around to see it either. Yeah. Yeah, we're just wrapping up. I know, thanks. Okay. We have the 9th of Av is the mourning for the destruction of the temple. We sit on the floor and fast. We have a few other fast days I'm not going to go into right now that commemorate. This one is a 25-hour fast. It's only one of 2 full day fasts that we have. Yom Kippur is the other one. Yom Kippur is from the Bible, from the Torah. This came later. This is because of the destruction. Both temples were destroyed on that day. Everything bad that happens in history happened on that day. They moved the expulsion from Gaza when Israel expelled the Jews from Gaza to give it over to the Palestinians. They moved it because it was supposed to fall on the 9th of Av, or really close to it. And they said, we don't want it to fall on the 9th of Av, so let's move it. But that's...
Seems like that would be the appropriate day to do it.
Kind of trying to cheat, yeah. Both the expulsion from Spain by Ferdinand and Isabella happened on that day, which was also the day that Columbus set sail. He had to delay because there were so many Jews trying to leave the country. Everything bad happens on that day. There's lots of things. The story of the Meraglim, the spies who went into Israel in the Bible, and then they came back with a bad report and they were killed. That happened on the 9th of Av. That was the first bad 9th of Av. I'm going to wrap into this all the other fast days and the other holiday, the other 2 holidays to discuss a little bit of Purim and Hanukkah. Hanukkah is actually coming up. Purim is in the book of Esther. If you want to read it, just pick up a Bible and read the book of Esther, and you'll know pretty much everything you need to know about it. This man Haman tried to destroy us. We won. Let's eat. It was actually in Persia, which is now Iran, which a lot of people have tried to point out to Ahmadinejad that maybe you should stop. It's a fascinating story, but I just don't have time to cover it. The one thing we do is we get dressed up in costumes, like Big Bird and that sort of thing, like Halloween. And you also are supposed to get drunk on that holiday. So, which we do pretty well, and we have a big we have a big feast, but it's not like the other holidays. You're allowed to drive and everything on this holiday because it's a rabbinic holiday. So you shift around. A lot of people go they'll start off at this house and then they go to that house and and everything.
So on all the holidays, you're not supposed to drive. In addition,
On Passover, Sukkot, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Shabbat, you don't drive.
okay, and do all the rules of Shabbat apply to those?
Pretty much, with the exception of making food. You're allowed to make food on the other holidays, except for Yom Kippur, of course. Ninth of Av is not. You can drive and whatever. Purim and Hanukkah, you can drive and whatever. Hanukkah, you can look in Josephus for. He talks about it. Basically, the Greeks were ruling over the Jews. They tried to force the Jews into idolatry, and one guy and his sons rebelled. The Matityahu was the Kohen Gadol, and they took to the hills and started a guerrilla war, and were successful in that they recaptured Jerusalem and the area around it, and managed to set up a kingdom of priests, which was a problem, and it eventually fell apart. But they were able to retake the temple, which they had set up idols and everything. The Greeks had set up idols in the temple, and they were managed to clean out the temple, and that's why we have the holiday of Hanukkah. They found some oil. It was supposed to only last for 1 day. It lasted for 8 days, and therefore we celebrate for 8 days. We celebrate by lighting the menorah. You've probably seen it. Chabad always puts up a big one somewhere public, and the menorah is that candle holder thing, and there was one in the temple. If you look at the Arch of Titus, which celebrates conquering the Jews, there's a picture they have a picture of it on that arch. That one had 7 branches. Ours has 9 because you have 8 days plus an extra candle to light the other ones with. There's a technical reason for that, but I'm not going to get into it. The other stuff is custom. We eat, because of the holiday had to do with oil, we eat fried foods. Donuts, which are called sufganiot in Hebrew, and latkes in the what do you call it? In the Ashkenazic, in the Eastern European world, they had flour, they had potatoes, and they had onions. So they put them together and fried it and said, okay, now we're going to celebrate Hanukkah with this. So that's become a very popular food. During the Greek rule, there was a prohibition against learning Torah. So what they would do was they would pretend to be gambling if the Greeks came around looking. That's what started the idea of the dreidel. You spin the dreidel, and it's a game where you gamble for
Gelt.
Money, or gelt now has taken on the meaning of chocolate coins. Gelt literally means gold in German and Yiddish. All right, any quick questions before I wrap up? This would be, I guess, the last class.
I have a couple questions. One is
Okay.
on Friday night services. When I was wanting to go to the Orthodox services and stuff, I was told by Rena, the shop, to come Saturday because more women come Saturdays.
Yes.
So what's, like, if I came to a Friday night service, would there be no women there? Or?
There'd be like about 3 or 4. Usually girls.
Girls, like unmarried women, is what you're saying?
No, I mean like young girls, like 10 years old or something like that.
And why do they go Friday night?
Just because they wanted to go with their father or whatever. They, some of them are more spiritual than others. A lot of it's just a practical manner, and it is completely a practical manner. And some of it is because women are preparing. They got to set the table and whatever.
Sure.
And some of it is just that once there aren't any women, no women want to go because
Right.
It's like Georgia Tech.
You don't light the candles. the candles are lit at home, correct?
The candles are lit at home, yes.
Okay. And I just have 2 other questions, if you can help me write.
And you can always email me after the fact too, or even call me.
I just want to know what would be the Hebrew phrase for "be blessed"? Oh, come on, Hebrew scholar.
So we do say at times when somebody has an aliyah to the Torah, we say we then say usually in the Ashkenazic world they say, I blanked. In the Ashkenazic, in the Sephardic world we say Chazak Baruch, and they say Shkoyach or Yasher Koach, Yasher Kocha, your straight power. And the answer is actually Baruch Tihiyeh.
How you spell the last name?
Tihiyeh. Tihiye. Tihiyeh.
Okay, so Baruch.
So Baruch is blessed, and Tihiyeh is you should be.
You should be blessed. Okay.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
It's not something common that y'all say.
No, it's not something common. In Yiddish, they say "Sei gesund," be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what we. I know we say Baruch Hashem all the time, but that's
Right.
not in a different. That's in, whenever you say something that basically it means like I should be thankful to God. You say Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem, the Giants won. That sort of thing. I'm not a Giants fan, but that sort of thing. Baruch Hashem, I got a job. Baruch Hashem, she didn't flunk. Anything you want to say, Baruch Hashem
Right.
too. Which just means
Bless
praise
your
the
name.
Lord. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and the other one is I want to know how to say Lord, hear our prayer. And I know Adonai or Shema, and then
We do say Shema Kolenu, hear our voice, but yeah.
Tefillah Heinu, would that be?
Actually, usually you would probably say Avinu Sheb'Shamayim, right? Our Father in heaven.
Uh-huh.
Shema Kolenu, Shema like the Shema, right? Which
Right.
means hear.
Right.
Kolenu, Koleinu, Kolenu,
Okay.
our voice.
Okay. Cool. All right. And probably one last thing.
Yeah.
I want to see the tefillin.
Oh yes, I forgot about that. We'll go out and we'll do that off the
Okay.
camera.
What's that?
Okay,